flames at the border, understanding the recent Assam Nagaland arson and its wider implications. Disclaimer from ZalengamMedia. The views expressed in this video are based on publicly available reports and media sources. The channel does not assume liability for accuracy, and viewers are encouraged to verify facts independently. Introduction. In the early hours of October 3, 2025, violence erupted in the Tengatol village of Golaghat district, Assam. Nearly 90 homes were set ablaze by suspected Naga militants in a midnight assault that reignited long-simmering tensions along the Assam-Nagaland border. The incident has triggered fear, political recriminations, and questions about governance and security in one of India's most sensitive border zones. This analysis explores the multifaceted dimensions of this violence, the historical background of the Assam-Nagaland boundary disputes, the sequence, motive, and method of the attack, its immediate human impact, responses by security, political actors, and civil society, and the longer-term implications and possible paths ahead. Historical roots and border disputes. To understand this latest flare-up, one must trace decades of contested claims, shifting demographics, and administrative fragilities. The Assam-Nagaland border stretches roughly 512 kilometers, a demarcation born out of colonial-era surveys and administrative convenience, but never fully accepted as legitimate by all local communities. The area known as the B sector, in and around Golaghat district, has been a consistent flashpoint. Assamese farmers, tribal communities, and Naga groups often accuse one another of encroachment, illegal land acquisition, or exploitative resource use. Over time, what began as boundary disagreements over map lines evolved into disputes over identity, cultural ownership, and rights to land. State commissions, judicial panels, and administrative efforts, such as those led by the Sundaram Commission, Boundary Review Committees, and the Supreme Court Boundary Commission, have attempted to mediate, yet trust deficits, mass mobilizations, and narrow political postures have impeded lasting resolution. Meanwhile, security forces have been periodically deployed to stabilize areas, but their presence has often been reactive rather than preventive. Beyond land, the border disputes also intersect with patterns of migration, shifting population dynamics, and infrastructure development. Border districts in Assam and Nagaland tend to be remote, underdeveloped, and lacking in strong governance institutions. In such contexts, local grievances can often translate rapidly into conflict. In Nagaland, the decades-long Nagaland movement, seeking integration of Naga majority areas across state lines, adds another layer of complexity. While formal peace accords have been signed, notably the 2015 Naga Peace Accord, and negotiations continue, the boundary question remains a live issue across several states including Assam, Arunachal, and Manipur. Thus, the border is less a clean line than a zone of overlapping claims, contested memory, and volatile local dynamics. In this climate, a sudden act of violence like that in Tengatol can reawaken latent fears and cumulative resentments. The Tengatol attack, unfolding of the night. According to multiple media accounts, the attack began at around 11:45 p.m. on October 2, when a large column of armed assailants, estimated by eyewitnesses as many as 400 in number, entered Tengatol village, triggering panic among sleeping residents. The attackers reportedly initiated their assault with indiscriminate gunfire aimed in the air, simultaneously hurling grenades and explosives in some locations, tactics clearly intended to terrify and scatter the populace. As villagers fled into adjacent forests, fields, rivers, and groves, the assailants moved to torch households, livestock, vehicles, personal documents, and other property. Villagers say that the attackers shouted that the area was Naga land, ordering residents to vacate. One resident declared, "They dragged us from our homes, told us to leave, saying this is Naga territory, yet our families have lived here for generations." Another claimed only the local Namgar prayer hall survived while nearly all else was reduced to ashes. Though early reports indicate no confirmed fatalities, the scale of destruction is massive. Dozens of households lie in ruins, and hundreds of residents are now displaced overnight. One sharp critique from villagers is that security forces, including CRPF and Assam police, responded only after significant delay, enabling attackers to carry out widespread arson before being checked. Locals recount that repeated warnings and threats in weeks preceding the attack were downplayed by authorities. In response to the attack, state agencies immediately mobilized relief efforts, and high-level visits by officials sought to assess the damage and coordinate future security measures. The MLA for Sarupathar, Biswajit Fukan, condemned the violence, appealed for strict action, and promised support for victims. In interstate coordination, officials from both Assam and Nagaland reportedly held meetings to discuss enhanced border watch and preventive deployment. Human and social costs. The immediate toll of the Tengatol violence is both material and psychological. Hundreds of families lost homes, possessions, and securities. Vital personal documents, identity cards, land deeds, certificates were destroyed, complicating rehabilitation and legal recourse. Livestock, vehicles, and agricultural assets also perished in the blaze. Internally displaced, villagers now confront the insecurity of temporary shelters, dependence on relief, and uncertainty about returning. Many express deep anguish, not just over material loss, but a feeling of being uprooted from ancestral land. In communities defined by lineage and locality, such displacement carries cultural and emotional weight. The timing, overnight when families were asleep, heightened the trauma and sense of vulnerability. Accounts of scrambling through dark fields, hiding in forests or rivers, and watching one's home in flames leave lasting scars beyond reconstructible loss. For minority communities like those in Tengatol, such violence can deepen a sense of marginalization. The claim by attackers that the land belongs to Naga groups implicitly questions the Assamese or non-Naga identity of residents, feeding the fear that cultural presence is insecure. A delayed or inadequate response by law enforcement may further erode trust in state institutions. When local residents say their warnings were ignored or dismissed, it suggests a governance gap, not just in reaction, but in preventive presence, intelligence, and conflict sensitivity. Moreover, the broader social fabric may suffer. Neighbors grow suspicious, intercommunity dialogues recede, and fear can spread to adjacent villages. The risk of escalating communal polarization is substantial. Political, security, and administrative responses. In the wake of the arson, Assam and Nagaland governments have scrambled to shore up security along border sectors. Troop deployments, joint patrols, and fortified border posts are now being organized. But as critics note, such measures may quell immediate violence but not heal the deeper causes. Political leaders in Assam have demanded strong punitive measures and accountability on the part of those who orchestrated the attack. The Assam government has committed to relief to affected families, and officials from both states are collaborating on restoring normalcy. Nagaland's authorities, meanwhile, face pressure to show restraint while defending claims. In the past, statements by Naga leaders about disputed territories have stoked tensions. Similar rhetoric has resurfaced in public discourse following the Tengatol burnings. Security agencies face a dilemma. Aggressive action risks inflaming the situation, but weak responses may invite further attacks. Intelligence failures, delayed deployment, and limited local presence have been cited as structural problems. Courts and boundary commissions remain relevant but slow. Earlier Supreme Court boundary interventions have produced little that satisfies all parties. Without a fresh, credible mediation mechanism trusted by all sides, boundary intervention remains a legal placeholder more than a live fix. Decentralized governance, better local policing, and community liaison structures may be necessary as supplements to high-level state efforts. Participatory approaches that include affected villagers in rebuilding, boundary realignment discussions, and confidence building can be more sustainable than top-down security strategies. Ethnic identity, narrative politics, and memory. At its heart, the Tengatol incident is also a conflict of narratives. Whose land is it? Whose history matters? Which community's presence has claim? From the perspective of attackers, as reported by villagers, the argument is that certain border lands should be reclaimed as Naga territory. The invocation of ethno-national claims frames this not as criminal arson, but as assertion of identity. For the victims, such claims strike at the legitimacy of their residential and ancestral claims. These identity-based claims, juxtaposed against decades of intermixing, settlement, and migration, make purely legal or administrative solutions inadequate. The emotional force of belonging and dispossession often outweighs paperwork or map lines in local minds. Collective memory plays a role. Among both Assamese and Naga communities, historical grievances, forced displacements, past conflict episodes, and perceived neglect of political promises are invoked in the current moment as justification or warning. Moreover, social media, local press, and community networks rapidly shape the public narrative. Each side spreads images, testimonies, and counterclaims. In this environment, emotional resonance often overrides measured fact-checking, making conflict escalation more likely. Politicians and activists may leverage such incidents to deepen state-level mobilization and voter alignment. The risk is that violence becomes a tool not only of territorial assertion, but of political legitimacy. Patterns and recurrence. Tengatol is not, regrettably, an anomaly in the Assam-Nagaland border context. Over decades, episodes of cross-border arson, harassment of settlers, land encroachment, and shootouts have punctuated periods of uneasy calm. The Merapani conflict of 1984, for instance, resulted in over 100 deaths between Assam and Nagaland communities. Repeated curfews, population movements, and militarized responses have characterized border management over decades. The recurring pattern is latent disputes over land, occasional flares of violence, deployment of security forces, short relief operations, followed by a lull until the next trigger. In many cases, the triggers are small: a claim of encroachment, a local confrontation, or contested resource usage. What makes Tengatol alarming is the scale of destruction, its timing, and the send message nature of the attack, burning entire settlements at night. It may signal a shift from episodic skirmishes to more aggressive assertive moves. In a border region still lacking infrastructural connectivity, justice access, and strong local institutions, recurrence is likely unless structural deficits are addressed. Implications for governance, security, and peace. The Tengatol attack presents policymakers and civil society with a set of pressing challenges and choices. First, rapid humanitarian relief is essential: shelter, food, medical support, and compensation. Rebuilding trust depends on the dignity of rehabilitation and fairness in dealing with survivors. Second, security mechanisms must be strengthened but fine-tuned. Heavy-handed policing can alienate communities. Weak policing invites further violence. Intelligence gathering, local liaisons, border outposts, and conflict-sensitive rules of engagement are critical. Third, the boundary dispute requires renewed negotiations, not mere rhetorics. A new mechanism, perhaps combining state, community, and judicial actors, could explore land swaps, buffer zones, joint administration, and shared resource management. Transparency and consensus building would matter more than inflexible firmness. Fourth, community reconciliation must be prioritized. Programs that encourage dialogue, shared economic activity, cultural exchange, and trust building can help prevent future flare-ups. Fifth, media and civil society must adopt responsibility to document, question, and hold actors accountable, but avoid inflaming tensions. Balanced reporting, fact verification, and inclusive narratives can help prevent escalation. Finally, political leadership must exercise restraint. Electoral incentives often drive harsh rhetoric, but long-term peace demands courageous gestures, mutual respect, and clear red lines against violence. Possible scenarios ahead. Several trajectories are possible in the coming weeks and months. In the optimistic scenario, the central government, Assam and Nagaland coordinate a high-level peace process, deploy neutral monitors, fast-track relief, and initiate inclusive boundary talks. Disarmament of fringe militant elements, community confidence building, and preventive monitoring may contain further violence. In a more pessimistic scenario, retaliatory attacks occur. The cycle of arson and counter-arson may spread to adjacent villages. Ethnic polarization may intensify, and long-term migration or flight may reconfigure local demographics. Cross-border movement of arms or militias may deepen the crisis. A middle path is probable: sporadic violence, localized escalations, political posturing, and uneasy calm, punctuated by state clampdowns and talk processes. The key will be how state and central actors respond in the immediate window, whether this becomes a turning point toward de-escalation or just another incident in the repeating series. Conclusion. The torching of nearly 90 homes in Tengatol village is more than an act of arson. It is a reminder that the unresolved seams of India's border zones remain combustible. The Assam-Nagaland border in particular is not just a territorial divide, but a fault line of memory, identity, and contested belonging. This incident underscores how local grievances, historic claims, weak governance, and identity politics can converge into violent rupture. The human cost is deeply felt, lives disrupted, trust shaken, and communities traumatized. Yet the response must transcend reaction. Durable peace will require equitable rehabilitation, transparent boundary mediation, strong yet community-sensitive security presence, and a political willingness to engage rather than entrench. Only then can the cycle of violence be broken and borderlands be freed from the shadow of arson and fear. Sources referenced: Assam Tribune reports on Tengatol attack and relief responses. Sentinel Assam coverage of the midnight assault. Hindustan Times account of extent of damage and grievances. Other regional summaries of torched houses in Golaghat. Context on Nagaland movement and peace accords. Thank you for watching. Please do share this video and also subscribe to Zalengam Media